The wind carried dust and whispers across the dead valley. The boy named Evan walked barefoot on the rocky path, holding an old satchel close to his chest. Inside were a few dry berries and a half-broken compass, his only treasures in this world. The last human colony had fallen months ago, leaving him to survive alone among the ruins. He was just 16, yet his eyes looked older eyes that had seen hunger, fear, and the kind of silence that only comes after war. Every night he built a small fire under the cliffs, and every night he heard strange voices carried by the wind. Sometimes they sounded like soft cries, sometimes like someone calling his name. He told himself it was the wind's trick, but deep down he felt watched. That evening, the sky glowed violet, a color he had never seen before. It was said the aliens who conquered this land could control the light itself. Evan stared at the horizon. The color shimmered and danced like fire on water. Then he heard it again. A cry. Faint, but real this time. It came from the riverbank below. He climbed down carefully, gripping the roots and rocks until he reached the river. The current was strong and dark, full of floating silver weeds. And there, half in the water, half on the stones, lay a figure. A girl, but not human. Her skin was pale blue, and her hair shimmered like glass under the moon. One of her legs was twisted badly, and the water had stained her white cloak with mud. For a long moment, Evan froze. His heart pounded. He had heard stories alien scouts sometimes left traps, pretending to be wounded. But the girl was shaking, her breathing weak, her hands covered in shallow cuts. He could see pain, not deceit. He took a step closer. "Can you hear me?" he asked quietly. The girl opened her eyes, golden like molten metal. Her voice was broken and small. "Please, help me cross." Evan looked at the rushing water, then at her leg. It was impossible for her to walk. He hesitated. "If I help you, will they find me?" he asked. She shook her head slowly, almost pleading. "They already have." Before he could ask what she meant, a sound echoed from beyond the cliffs, a deep metallic hum, like engines stirring far away. He didn't think twice. He lifted the girl into his arms. She was light but trembling with cold. Step by step, he waded into the icy current, the water biting at his knees, then his waist. The girl clung to him tightly, whispering in her strange language. The current pushed hard, almost pulling them under, but Evan fought it with all his strength. By the time they reached the other side, his clothes were heavy and his legs numb. He set her down under a tree, panting. She looked at him with tears in her golden eyes. "You shouldn't have helped me," she said softly. "They will think you are with me." "Who?" Evan asked, confused. "The hunters," she whispered. "They want me dead." He frowned. "Why?" "You're one of them." Her lips trembled. "Not anymore." The wind picked up again, carrying the same haunting whispers from before. Evan wrapped his old jacket around her shoulders. "You need to rest," he said. "There's an old shelter near the rocks. We can stay there tonight." She nodded weakly. "My name is Lyra," she murmured. "Evan," he replied. Together they limped toward the small cave near the cliffs. Inside, the air was damp but safe. He lit a small fire and watched her as she stared into the flames. Her eyes reflected the light in patterns he had never seen. She looked fragile but strangely powerful, like something ancient trapped in a wounded form. "What were you doing at the river?" he asked after a while. Lyra took a long breath. "Running from fate," she said simply. "My people? They think I am cursed. I hear voices no one else can hear. They call it the whisper of prophecy." Evan felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Prophecy?" She nodded. "A voice told me to cross the river." to find the last human boy. It said he would change everything. The fire crackled between them. For a moment, neither spoke. Evan tried to laugh it off. "That's crazy," he said. "I'm just a nobody." But Lyra only looked at him sadly. "Then why did you come when I called?" Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. The violet glow turned red. Far in the distance, metal shapes moved through the mist alien warships, scanning the valley. Evan stared at them in silence, realizing that his small act of kindness might have just set something enormous in motion. Lyra closed her eyes, whispering words he couldn't understand. The ground trembled slightly, as if the earth itself had heard her. Evan turned toward the cave entrance, gripping his satchel. "What's happening?" he asked. She opened her eyes again. "They've found me," she said softly. "And they will come for you too." As the storm broke and lightning split the sky, Evan felt the first spark of destiny burn inside him. He didn't know it yet, but by dawn, the valley would not belong to humans or aliens alone. It would belong to the story of two souls, an orphan and a broken seer, who changed the meaning of mercy forever. The storm raged all night. Wind screamed through the canyon like an angry spirit, throwing dust and sparks into the cave. Evan sat close to the fire, watching the flames dance against the damp stone. Beside him, Lyra slept fitfully, her injured leg wrapped in old bandages torn from his own shirt. Every few minutes, she murmured strange words in her sleep, words that didn't sound like pain, but prophecy. He tried to rest, but couldn't. The echoes of her last sentence kept spinning in his head. "They will come for you too." What did that mean? Why him? He was nobody, just a hungry orphan who had lost everything. Outside, lightning split the sky again, and for a second, the world turned white. In that flash, Evan saw something on the ridge, dark shapes, tall and sharp-edged, moving slowly through the rain. His breath caught. "Scouts." He shook Lyra awake. "Hey, we have to move." "Now?" She opened her eyes, dazed. "The hunters?" "Yes, they're close." She tried to stand, but gasped in pain. Her leg couldn't bear weight. Without thinking, Evan threw her arm over his shoulder. "Come on. We can make it to the old bridge before sunrise." They stumbled out into the storm. The river beside them roared louder than before, glowing faintly red from the lightning above. The air smelled like iron and ash. Lyra's face twisted with pain, but she kept whispering something under her breath, something that made the air around them shimmer faintly, like invisible threads twisting in the rain. "What are you doing?" Evan asked. "Calling the light," she said through gritted teeth. "To hide us." Before he could reply, a sharp hum pierced the night. A blue beam of energy struck the ground behind them, exploding into sparks. The shockwave threw them forward. Evan shielded Lyra with his body as rocks and dirt rained down. From the ridge came 3 alien soldiers in black armor, their weapons glowing. Their helmets reflected the storm's light like mirrors. One shouted something in a deep mechanical voice, and all 3 advanced. Evan's heart pounded. He had no weapon, no chance. He looked at Lyra. Her eyes glowed brighter now, pure gold in the darkness. She pressed her trembling hands to the ground. The air vibrated. The river beside them began to churn, glowing brighter, no longer red from lightning, but from something deeper, alive. The soldiers hesitated. The water rose suddenly, swirling like a living flame. The heat hit Evan's skin, and he realized it wasn't water anymore. It was molten light, flowing like a river of fire. Lyra's voice rose above the storm. "Back away," she cried, though her voice sounded like many voices layered together. The soldiers fired again, but the bolts dissolved before reaching her. The fiery water surged forward and swallowed them whole. The light burned bright, then faded, leaving only Steen. Evan stared in shock. What was that? He whispered. Lyra fell to her knees, trembling. The whisper, she said weakly. It listens when I am afraid. He caught her before she collapsed. Her skin was burning hot, her breathing shallow. You're bleeding, he said. You can't keep using whatever that is. She gave a small, tired smile. It's not me, she said softly. It's something older than me. The fire remembers the promises of the past. Evan didn't understand, but he knew they couldn't stay. He carried her again, crossing the smoking stones left by the fire. The storm began to fade, replaced by a heavy silence. Hours later, they reached the old bridge, half collapsed, wooden, and hanging over another stretch of river. The sky in the east was turning silver. Dawn was close. Evan laid Lyra down gently and looked at the water below. The river had cooled, but faint streaks of orange light still glowed beneath the surface. It looked like the world itself was waking up. Why are they after you? He asked finally. You said you were cursed, but that doesn't explain this. Lyra's golden eyes opened halfway. Because I refused to serve the warlords, she said. They wanted me to use my gift to destroy, not heal. I ran away. They sent hunters to erase me. Evan frowned. Then why help me? I'm just a human orphan. Your people hate us. Her eyes softened. Not all of us do. The whisper said humans and my kind share one heart, both broken, both searching for light. It told me a human would be my bridge. Bridge? He repeated, confused. She smiled faintly. Between two worlds. Before he could say more, a faint rumble echoed through the canyon. Not thunder this time, engines. Many engines. He turned toward the horizon. Through the mist of dawn, dark shapes were approaching hovercrafts, soldiers, banners glowing with alien runes. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They found us again? He asked, panic rising. Lyra looked, her expression unreadable. No, she said quietly. Those are not the hunters. Evan blinked. Then who? Before he finished, one of the ships broke formation and hovered low above the river. A voice boomed in a language he didn't understand, but Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She turned to him, her hand shaking as it reached for his. You brought me across the river, she whispered. Now my people will cross for you. The engines roared louder. The dawn light turned golden. Across the valley, the sky filled with banners, shining like fire in the wind. Evan stood frozen, realization dawning on him. The crippled girl he saved was no ordinary runaway. She was something far greater. And whatever she had awakened was now coming for him. The sky was no longer dark. The first light of dawn spread over the valley like a promise and a warning. Evan stood on the edge of the ruined bridge, holding Lyra's trembling hand, his heart beating fast. Across the misty horizon, hundreds of glowing banners moved like rivers of fire in the air. Ships hummed above the trees, their engines deep and steady, like the heartbeat of a giant. He didn't understand what he was seeing. The ships looked old silver hulls marked with strange runes that shimmered like living light. The air itself seemed to hum with power. He turned to Lyra, who was watching them with tears streaming down her face. They've come, she whispered. They answered the call. Who are they? Evan asked. My mother's guard, Lyra said softly. The last free army of the Ethethera. I thought they were all gone. Evan's throat tightened. Your mother? You mean you're a princess? Lyra looked away, ashamed. Not anymore. I lost my crown when I refused to lead the war. I chose peace, and they called me broken. The ships drew closer, their shadows sweeping across the bridge. Evan felt the wind shift. The front vessel lowered until it hovered just above the ground. Its ramp opened with a hiss. An armored figure stepped out tall, elegant, their armor glowing faintly like starlight. Their faces were hidden behind helmets shaped like wings. One of them walked forward, holding a long staff marked with burning sigils. His voice was deep and steady. "Princess Lyra of the Whispered Flame," he said in their language. "The prophecy was true. The river of fire has returned." Lyra tried to stand, but her injured leg failed her. Evan caught her quickly, steadying her as the soldier looked at him. His golden visor flickered. "You are human," he said coldly. Evan nodded slowly, unsure if that was good or bad. "Yeah, and she needed help." The soldier's hand tightened on his staff. "You touched the daughter of the flame?" Lyra raised her hand weakly. "He saved me," she said. "If not for him, I would have died. Show him respect." There was silence. Then the soldier dropped to one knee and struck the ground with his staff. The sound echoed across the valley like thunder. Behind him, every soldier followed, kneeling in perfect unison. Evan stared, his mouth open. What are they doing?" Lyra looked at him with a tired smile. "They bow to the one the prophecy spoke of, the bridge between light and flesh." He stepped back, shaking his head. "No, that's a mistake. I'm no one." But Lyra only whispered, "You carried the fire across the river. The whisper chose you." The soldiers rose again, their golden eyes glinting beneath their helmets. The leader turned and barked orders in their tongue. Within minutes, medics rushed forward, lifting Lyra onto a floating stretcher. One approached Evan and offered him a clean cloak, but he was too stunned to move. "Where are you taking her?" he asked quickly. "To the healing vessel," the leader said. "She must recover before the council meets." Evan frowned. "And what about me?" The leader looked at him for a long moment. "You are under her protection. That makes you part of her fate." Evan didn't like the sound of that. But when he looked at Lyra so pale, yet peaceful now, he couldn't walk away. He followed as they carried her aboard the ship. Inside, the air was warm and filled with a soft hum. Strange symbols glowed along the walls, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. He sat beside her as the medics treated her wounds with glowing gel that sealed, skin like magic. Lyra opened her eyes and looked at him. "You should eat," she whispered. "You look like you haven't slept in days." He smiled faintly. "You're one to talk." She laughed softly, the sound fragile but real. "You humans always pretend you're fine," she said, "even when you're breaking inside." Evan leaned back against the wall. "It's the only thing we're good at." For a moment, there was peace. But outside, the ships were landing one by one, and the valley filled with the sound of marching boots. The dawn light turned golden, reflecting off armor and banners. Lyra's commander entered the chamber again. "Princess," he said, bowing his head. "Scouts report the hunters are regrouping to the north. They will come by nightfall." Lyra's calm face hardened. "Then we stand ready. Prepare the wards." Evan looked between them. "You mean you're going to fight?" "Yes," she said softly. "But not to destroy them, to end this cycle." He frowned. "And what about me? What am I supposed to do?" She reached out and took his hand gently. "You've already done what no one else could. You reminded us what mercy looks like." The commander gave a strange salute and left. The ship began to rise again, carrying them above the burning valley. Through the window, Evan saw soldiers forming lines. Light shields flickering, weapons glowing. He couldn't help but feel small, but somehow, in that vast army's reflection, he saw himself differently. A lonely human orphan had crossed a river to help a wounded stranger. Now, an alien army was gathering under the dawn because of that choice. Lyra turned to him, her golden eyes calm. "The whisper says this is only the beginning," she murmured. The beginning of what? Evan asked. She looked toward the horizon, where the sun was rising behind the banners. The world remembering what kindness can do. Outside, horns sounded across the sky as the first rays of sunlight struck the banners, turning them into fire. The dawn of banners had begun. Evening fell over the valley like a heavy blanket. The golden banners that had burned in the dawn now hung still and silent, their light fading to a dim glow. Smoke from the ship engines drifted into the darkening sky, mixing with the scent of rain and metal. Evan stood outside the command tent, watching hundreds of alien soldiers move like silver shadows. Preparing for battle, they worked without sound-sharpening blades made of crystal, checking the power cores in their staffs, painting glowing runes on the ground. He could feel the tension in the air, thick and electric. Somewhere behind the lines, Lyra rested inside a healer's dome, her leg bound in a shining brace. Evan's hands shook slightly. He wasn't a soldier. He had never fought anyone in his life. He was just an orphan boy who used to steal fruit from the ruins to survive. Yet now, these warriors nodded to him as they passed, as if he belonged here. A tall alien woman approached, her armor black with streaks of silver light. She carried a long spear that hummed softly. "Human," she said in a calm, deep voice. "The princess said you should eat. The night will be long." Evan took the small pack she offered, filled with warm bread and glowing fruit. "Thanks," he said, sitting near the fire. The woman watched him quietly. "You saved her life. That means something to us." He looked up. "To me, it just means she needed help." She tilted her head. "That is why it means something?" Then she turned and walked away, her armor reflecting the stars. Evan ate slowly, thinking of Lyra. He could still see her eyes golden, calm, but hiding pain. She had faced death without fear, but now she was leading an army that could die for her. It didn't feel fair. The sky rumbled in the distance. A strange blue light shimmered over the horizon. The hunters were coming. Suddenly the commander Kale, Lyra's loyal guard, stepped up onto a stone platform. His voice echoed across the valley. "The enemy moves through the north ridge. Shields to the front. Hold the river line until the second moon rises." Evan's stomach turned. All around him, the army came alive, marching, chanting, ready. He saw fear on none of their faces, only purpose. Kale looked at Evan. "Stay near the princess," he ordered. "If she falls, everything falls." Evan nodded, even though his knees felt weak. He ran toward the healer's dome. Inside, Lyra sat upright, light from the crystal walls painting her skin in soft gold. She smiled faintly when she saw him. "You came back. Did you think I'd run?" He said, breathless. "I hoped you wouldn't," she replied gently. "The whisper said you would stay." Outside, the first explosion shook the ground. The hunters had arrived. Evan peeked out of the dome. Dozens of dark ships floated over the ridge, firing blue energy that tore through the trees. The air burned and screamed. Kale's soldiers raised their shields, forming a wall of light that shimmered like glass. The first blasts hit and broke apart in sparks, but the force still pushed everyone back. The sound was deafening. Lyra touched the dome wall and closed her eyes. "They seek me," she whispered. "They believe if I die, the light dies too." Evan knelt beside her. "Then I'll make sure you don't." She looked at him, her expression soft. "You can't fight them all." "Maybe not," he said, picking up a fallen guard's side weapon, a short pulse blade that hummed when activated. "But I can fight for one." For a moment, she just stared at him. Then she reached out and pressed her palm to his chest. "The whisper sees courage in you," she murmured. "Don't lose it." The dome opened, and the sound of battle roared in. Evan stepped out into chaos. Blue bolts cut through the night, burning the air. He saw Kale strike one of the hunters with his staff, light flaring as metal clashed. Evan ducked behind the wreck of a transport cart, heart pounding. He moved instinctively, helping pull a wounded soldier to cover, dragging another away from falling debris. The air was filled with shouts in alien tongues, fire, and smoke. He couldn't see the sky anymore, just flashes of blue and gold dot, and he heard it, a high-pitched scream of engines overhead. A hunter ship swooped low, targeting the healer's dome. "No!" Evan shouted. He sprinted toward it, firing the pulse blade's energy bursts wildly. One shot hit the ship's side, another struck its engine. The vessel spun out of control and crashed into the trees with a thunderous roar. The blast knocked him off his feet. He hit the ground hard, ears ringing. For a moment, everything was white noise. Then he felt someone grab his arm. It was Lyra. She was standing, limping badly, her golden eyes blazing. "Evan, look!" she cried. He turned and saw the river burning again, not with fire this time, but with light. Streams of golden energy rose from the water, swirling around Lyra like ribbons. The hunters froze. Even Kale's troops stopped to stare. Lyra lifted her hands, and her voice carried over the battlefield calm, strong, unshaken. "Enough," she commanded. The light from the river surged upward, splitting into hundreds of tiny glowing shaped spirits or memories or something older than either. They swept across the valley, washing over the hunter's ship's where the light touched, engines died. Weapons melted. The blue fire of war faded into silence. When it was over, only the whisper of the wind remained. The hunter's fleet hung broken in the sky, falling one by one into the sea of trees. Lyra collapsed, and Evan caught her before she hit the ground. Her breathing was weak, but steady. She smiled faintly. "The whisper said the fire would answer only once," she said. "Now it sleeps." Evan held her close, staring at the ruined valley smoke, silence, and soft golden mist rising from the river. The night of hunters had ended, but deep inside, he knew this wasn't the end of their story. Something in the quiet whispered of another dawn, and another choice waiting just beyond it. The night faded slowly. Smoke drifted above the valley like ghosts, and the air smelled of ash and river mist. The once roaring battlefield was quiet. Now only the crackle of dying fires and the whisper of the wind remained. Evan sat on the edge of a broken ridge, his clothes burned and torn, holding Lyra's hand. She lay beside him, pale but breathing. The river that had burned with golden light was calm again. Its surface reflected the first glow of morning, soft and silver. The whisper's voice was gone now, but its echo seemed to linger in every ripple. In every breath of wind, Kale and the other soldiers moved through the ruins, helping the wounded, clearing debris, gathering what was left of the fallen. Their glowing armor was cracked, their banners torn, yet they carried themselves with quiet pride. They had survived what no army should have survived. Evan stared at them and felt something stir inside his chest, a feeling that was neither joy nor sorrow, but a strange mix of both. He had been nobody all his life. But here, in this alien valley, among beings who once hated humans, he had found meaning. Lyra stirred weakly beside him. "Is it over?" she whispered. He looked down at her, relieved to hear her voice. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's over. For now." She smiled faintly, her golden eyes dull but still warm. "You kept your promise." He frowned. "What promise?" "To stay," she murmured. "The whisper said the bridge would not run from the storm." Evan chuckled quietly. "I guess I didn't have anywhere else to go." Lyra's gaze drifted to the horizon. The sky was turning orange and pink, the sun climbing above the smoke. "Do you hear it?" she asked suddenly. "Hear what?" "The world," she whispered. It's breathing again. Evan listened and realized she was right. The silence wasn't dead. It was alive. The air felt lighter, as if the valley itself had been freed from something ancient. Birds began to sing in the far trees. The ground, scorched from battle, shimmered faintly with new light. Cale approached and knelt before them, his armor dented and his face weary. "The hunters are gone," he said. "Their leader fled into the mountains. We've begun rebuilding the camps." Lyra tried to sit up, and Evan helped her. "We will not rebuild for war," she said firmly. "We will rebuild for peace." Cale bowed his head. "As you command, princess." Evan blinked. "You're still a princess to them." Lyra looked at him with a small smile. "Only because of you." The whisper said the river of fire would return when a human heart showed mercy. They saw it happen. He shook his head. "I didn't do anything special. I just carried someone who needed help." "That," Lyra said softly, "is the rarest thing left in this galaxy." The sun broke fully over the valley then, bathing everything in light. The soldiers raised their banners once more, not for war this time, but for remembrance. Their armor glowed like mirrors catching the dawn. Cale turned to Evan. "The council wishes to honor you," he said. "They call you the Bridge of Dawn." Evan laughed quietly. "That's too much. I'm just a kid from the ruins." "Perhaps," Cale said, "but sometimes the smallest bridges carry the heaviest weight." Lyra looked at Evan with gentle eyes. "You can go home if you wish. The whisper no longer binds you." Evan was silent for a long moment. He thought of the ruins he had left behind, the empty colonies, the silent machines, the endless loneliness. Then he looked at her wounded, but alive, surrounded by people who had learned compassion because of her courage. He shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Home isn't behind me anymore. It's here." Lyra's eyes glistened. "Then stay," she whispered. "Stay and help me rebuild what kindness destroyed." Evan smiled faintly. "Deal." A quiet wind passed over them, carrying the smell of rain and new life. The river sparkled under the rising sun. For a moment, Evan thought he heard a faint voice in the wind. Soft and distant, like the whisper that had started everything. It said only one word: remember. He looked at Lyra, who had closed her eyes again, resting. Around them, the alien soldiers worked in silence, mending what was broken. The valley no longer felt haunted. It felt sacred. As the sun rose higher, Evan stood and faced the light. He wasn't sure what would come next: peace, war, or something in between, but he knew one thing with certainty. He would no longer walk alone. Lyra had found hope in a human. He had found purpose in an alien. And together, they had taught a broken world that mercy was stronger than fear. The dawn spread across the valley like a golden wave, touching every face, every scar, every shattered stone. And for the first time since the old wars ended, the light of two worlds rose together side by side.